Sometimes, when certain people are confronted with the consequences of capitalism, they try to spin it in a way that puts the responsibility of capitalism's crises and faults onto the notion of corporatism or crony capitalism. This is a very flawed and frankly dishonest position to have, as I will illustrate. This sort of argument is primarily centered on two things. First of all, a continuum fallacy, and second of all, idealistic notions divorced from actual material conditions. Let's say that X is capitalism and Y is corporatism. There is no definable point where X, capitalism, becomes Y, corporatism. Therefore, there is no difference between X and Y. Basically, the argument fails to answer or even consider at what point does capitalism become corporatism. What percentage of government-granted monopolies and bailouts, subsidies, and corporate lobbying must exist to turn an economy from capitalist to corporatist? Is it 49%, 51%, 35%, 1%? What characteristics of capitalism fundamentally change during this transformation from capitalism to corporatism? How are they fundamentally different? On top of this, it is idealistic and divorced from material conditions because the concept of true capitalism requires a historically non-existent petty commodity production economy. It ignores the evolutionary nature of capitalism and the complex organization of economy. The argument basically makes the assumption that people within a market economy do not have an interest in mitigating risk and organizing to benefit from an economy of scale by pooling their resources and forming corporate vehicles for investment. It's against all historical and scientific evidence to claim that market competition does not entail the corollary that there will be a market winner who will do what is necessary to maintain their position, which includes lobbying with the government to get preferential treatment, coercive barriers against entry into the market from new competitors, etc. Even if you were to somehow bring capitalism more than a century back, when free competition did reign, you'd only be prolonging the inevitable. That is, the formation of monopolies, a natural trend of capitalist development, the use of the state to serve the interests of individual capitalists, groups of capitalists, or the capitalist class as a whole, etc. Whatever you do, these things will happen, and this is because these things are natural consequences of capitalism's development. Many large multinational corporations began as much smaller companies. The so-called free market is not some obstacle to monopoly, but rather a facilitator of monopolies. Every capitalist in any industry attempts to dominate the market. The very system demands they do so. There's no interest in playing fair in order to not crush the competition. It's really weird how the proponents of the free market preach the virtues of free market competition based on what they claim to be the fact that humans are self-seeking entities, yet at the same time they seem to expect stockholders and directors of major corporations to go against their economic self-interests in order to maintain a state of fair competition with their rivals. Yet even crazier, proponents of the free market think that somehow capitalists should refuse to use their massive wealth and resources to obtain favorable treatment and other benefits from the state, thus sacrificing a crucial advantage over their competitors. This, well, idiocy exposes itself, really. Let's come back to reality now. Anyone can do some research into the largest multinational corporations and find out how they started. Many have very humble roots. Capitalism is a mode of production, and like previous modes of production, it evolves over time. It does not disappear one day just because the state passes new regulations or removes old ones. It does not change into some kind of wrong capitalism just because lobbyists bounce favors with politicians. Were that the case, we could say that capitalism never existed at all. The problem isn't crony capitalism or cowboy capitalism, monopoly capitalism, hyper-capitalism, or whatever other prefix people will come up with next week. These conservatives and right-wing libertarians drastically underestimate the extent to which state intervention has been structurally central to capitalism as a historical system since its very beginnings. For example, the enclosure of open fields for sheep pasture in late medieval and early modern times, the parliamentary enclosures of common woods, waste and pasture in the 18th century, the colonial enclosure of land in the Third World and eviction of native cultivators, the engrossment of Third World mines and mineral resources, the enslavement of foreign and domestic populations. Nothing remotely resembling the modern concentration of economic power and wealth, or the model of corporate capitalism most people think of as normal nowadays, would ever have been possible without all these forms of state intervention. You can pair capitalism with any prefix, adjective, or noun as you see fit, but the internal contradictions, exploitation, instability, and absurdities don't lie in the words. They are all inherent features of capitalism, plain and simple. Any proposed solution to the inherent problems of capitalism, which essentially boil down to more capitalism, are eventually doomed to failure. I'll leave you with this last note. If these people who claim corporatism are honest and truthful, then let them answer this. Are all the great things we have nowadays given to us by capitalism then, or corporatism? Thanks for watching, and thank you so much for 2,000 subs. I apologize for being away for a while. Sadly, there will be more of that for the time being. No worries though, I'll still try my hardest to make more videos, and that's it. See you guys in the next one. Internationale, mes noms dan gelijk.